Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing another DIY tarot spread where I'm going to share with you a on-the-fly, in-the-moment tarot spread that I created around a central idea, or really in this case it was inspired by a deck, and then I have since expanded upon that, as I sometimes do. So this is what I am calling a manifestation spread. Now, I do want to preface this video with the very clear disclaimer that I am not an expert in manifestation work. It is not something that I do very often. It's also not something that I am very knowledgeable about. I have I've done a bit of study over the years in terms of like witchcraft as well as like law of attraction and things like that. But in general, it's not a practice that I work with very often or very diligently, which is probably counterintuitive to the actual art of manifestation. So how I've been approaching this idea of manifestation is creating sort of like a focal point to help me channel. I know I love that word, but a focal point to help me kind of understand where it is that I can put my energy, what I need to know to support that, and how I can go about putting the things into place that I need in order to create that. So I kind of approach manifestation as like I'm setting an intention, I'm figuring out what I need to do to get it done, and then I'm actually doing the work. I really don't ascribe, I don't know proper term there, to the idea that like you can just simply ask the universe for something and it will provide. I feel like the universe does provide in a sense, but like we are an active participant in that process. It's not magic. Things don't just magically happen, at least they haven't in my life. I've had to work very hard for everything that I have created. So that being said, that disclaimer being said, how I'm approaching this manifestation spread is through that lens. So it could probably just as easily be called an intention spread, but I have added that layer in there for me of like, I need something to actively do, right? Just because setting, the intention out to the universe and saying, hey, I want this thing, and then not actively and actually doing the work to help it be created just doesn't really flow with my view of the world. So I created this as a way to set that intention to kind of work on manifesting something, but also giving me sort of some concrete actions and processes that I can follow to get there. So all of that babble aside, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the cards, the decks that I'm going to be using for this. I do have an alternate version of this as well that I'm going to share with you. So to start with, I want to talk about the Magdalene Manifestation cards. Now, full disclosure, this particular deck was sent to me for review by the publisher, and I have spent the last month working with this deck in various ways, and this is kind of the sort of place that I've found it to really work well for me in my practice. I'll be talking more about, really probably all three of these decks more in depth in my monthly wrap-up, but for right now I really want to focus on the spreads. The other deck that I'm using, this one here, is the Sacred Geometry Activations Oracle. And then the tarot deck that I am using is the Heavenly Blooms. So that kind of gives you an idea of like, this is what cultivated this spread, this practice, this activity that I've been working with throughout the last couple of weeks, and the spread that I've developed around it. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the spread so I can kind of show you how this works or how I've been using it. As always, with any of these DIY tarot spreads that I share with you, please feel free to, change them and create them in a way that works for you. Change the decks, change the positions, do whatever it is, inspire something within you, that's fantastic. They definitely don't have to be used in the way in which I intend them. They can be used in any way you see fit. So the first thing that I do is I select one of these Sacred Geometry Activation Oracle. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail about what each of these decks are for and what they're designed and all of that. Again, I will cover that in my reflection video. What I've been using this for is sort of a focal point and an anchor for the reading. So let's go ahead and pull one of those. And we got the sacral chakra and the frequency. So the message down at the bottom says, the frequency of the sacral chakra, the orange flower of life, supports our ability to flow with our desires and stimulates our creative power to manifest success and abundance in our lives. So it's a pretty great kind of generic, and I mean that in the best way, sort of energy for us to focus on and anchor into for this reading. So that becomes my first card, and that is my sort of focal point and my anchor for the reading. Sorry for being really zoomed out, but we're going to need some space. Not necessarily because this is a very big reading because it only has 6 cards, but we're working with some very large decks. Okay, so then what came about and how I ended up using this particular deck. Okay, so full disclosure about this deck, there is a structure and there are 4 kind of key cards. I was trying to remember what they called them. They are the resource cards. So there are 4 resource cards in this deck that I do not use. And again, I'll talk about that more in my monthly reflections. There's nothing wrong with these cards. They're meant to serve a purpose. I just don't use them in the spreads and the work that I've been doing with them. So I have pulled the 4 resource cards out of this deck. Not that I keep them separate, they're just not there at the moment. And then what I am using is the remainder of the cards, which are the 20 codes, and each has a key and a hologram. So when we go through this process, you'll see how that works, because there are essentially 2 sides to every theme or concept within this deck. This is a very, very large oracle deck, and it does side shuffle okay, but it's a little bit difficult for me to work with. So this deck is really kind of focused on the idea of sort of duality, so balancing energies, or at least that was my takeaway. Like, they talked a lot about like divine and divine feminine, divine masculine energy. We have the key and the and now I've already forgotten what it was called. The key and the hologram. Again, there's a structure there, there's a reason for it, but I'm going to show you how I've been working with it. So I give the cards a shuffle, the deck a shuffle, and I've got my focal point card here, which I'm using the sacred geometry activation for. I will get into the guidebook as well and really dive deep into what that means as a focal point and as an anchor for this message. Then I give these Magdalene manifestation cards a shuffle, and I'm going to pull just one. So the first one that I got was Temple of Love, and this is about physical radiance. So this is the key card. I believe the key is the masculine energy. So it says your body's capacity to receive more without the crash is key. Prepare for more income, impact, and time. Sometimes those messages don't really align for me, but like I can get on board with the idea of sort of unlocking the physicality. And so that's the one side of that. That's the key that unlocks this reading. And then when I go through and I'm going to go through this deck and I'm going to find the matching card. There it is, Temple of Love, Vibrant Home. I mean, you don't have to look it up. Like, they all have the same name at the top. Like, here's 2 that were right next to each other. So this is embodied radiance of with the hologram and embodied radiance with the key. Sometimes just all the words make it hard for me to kind of focus on what it is that I need to be finding. So I just look it up in the book just to, make sure that I'm seeing what I need to see. So now I've got the hologram, the other side of that Temple of Love with Vibrant Home. And it says, form follows coherent energy, consecrate your home and creations to divine order, success, and harmony. So now this isn't necessarily the way this deck was intended to be used. Just to be clear, this is a reading that I've come up with that just utilizes this deck after working with it in kind of the guidebook and the creator's intention for a couple of weeks now. And then I've developed my own sort of reading out of this. So I've got my focal point, I've got my two sides, my sort of balance of the key and the hologram. There's lots of different ways that you can work with that sort of 2-card other side of the coin layout. I really do like this deck for this practice because the two sides of the coin are built in. There are 2 cards for every theme card, and so it works really well for this particular practice. So now I'm just gonna use a tarot deck, and I'm gonna pull 3 cards to get my sort of context around this reading, because this could apply to anything, right? I mean, if I have something particular in mind that I want to do some, let's say, manifestation work, or something that I want to work on, focus on, try to bring into being for myself and in my life, then I can, you know, certainly have that as my, like, in the back of my mind as my focal point. But I also like to include the tarot as a way to help me really hone in on what it is that message is trying to tell me. So let me just move these up a little bit, because again, like I said, we're working with some very large cards here. So we've got the Knight of Cups, the 3 of Cups, and the Lovers. So this would be the sort of deeper dive message into this energy, as well as kind of like, so I've got this, I've got the sacral chakra, and I'm in the temple of love and looking at physical radiance and vibrant home. So how can I create this idea of connecting to the sacral, to the flow of creative power through what I'm physically putting out into the world, also with what I'm cultivating around me. This is very Emperor and Empress energy as well, King and Queen energy. And then I've got the tarot deck now down here to kind of give me a little bit of context, as well as kind of like, okay, so what do I need to keep in mind? So we've got the Knight of Cups, right? I need to be open to this idea. I need to be willing to explore it. I've got the 3 of Cups here, so that might tell me that maybe I could find some support in this work through my friends, communities, through my own personal support group. And then we have the Lovers. So depending on your viewpoint of the Lovers, this is such a great card to come up with talking about this temple of love and the feminine and masculine, or the inner and outer. For me, the Lovers is not so much about physical love or emotional love. To me, that's the 2 of Cups card. So this would be more about divine connection. This is the sort of the 2 sides of self coming together to connect in the wholeness of the divine energy. And I think that that's a great matchup to have with these particular cards, because it's kind of telling me like, this is the channel point. This is like the connection point for this work, is to maybe incorporate some of my divine support system as well, right? As well as my physical support system. So this reading has worked really well for me. Let's go ahead and do just one more example with this particular card set, just so you can again see them in motion, kind of, and how it kind of comes together. So we're going to pull our focus card, and we got Prosperity from the Sacred Geometry Activation. So the frequency of prosperity supports our feeling of well-being by allowing the inclusion of everything that makes our body, mind, heart, soul, and spirit sing. It invites us to express ourselves in joy and celebration of the abundance and riches that the universe provides. So it's beyond prosperity of, you know, monetary, just prosperity in a whole self sense, which is fantastic. Okay, give this a little shuffle, because I know I had 2 cards on the top. Let's pull our first card. And we got Fully Realized with Manifestation Master. Again, this is a key card. So fully commit to manifesting 100% of your project. Bring your targets into fruition with adeptness and ease. Now, of course, in doing this work, I would also very much be tapping into the guidebooks for these oracles, because there's a lot of good information that can be gleaned from that to add that deeper layer. So now I'm going to go ahead and find my Fully Realized hologram card. And there it is, with spiritual adeptness, realization as in enlightenment. Use energy and frequency for aligned manifestation. Now, sometimes this kind of language can trip me up a little bit. So sometimes I have to do a little bit of reframing in the terms of language in my head. But I can get on board with this idea of like, in order to cultivate this prosperity, we need to be the master of manifestation, right? We need to actively go out and cultivate things. We can't just expect prosperity to, drop into our laps. We got to go out there, we got to make it happen. And then I love this idea of, the spiritual adeptness, where we have that realization and that enlightenment that when you bring all those parts of yourself together, that's where you can create that prosperity in the way that it's talking about that whole self prosperity. So again, let's pull 3 cards for our kind of expanded message. We got the 4 of Wands, the 10 of Swords, and the 2 of Cups. So this is really interesting because these cards might also be giving us an idea of where we need to maybe be on the lookout for some challenge points, right? Whenever we're kind of cultivating or creating something in our lives, it's usually not without some sort of challenge, right? There's something that's going to create a resistance point for us, be that in ourselves or within the external world. And so this is, this 10 of Swords is kind of can be a good reminder of that too, that like there's probably gonna be some challenge points along the way, but like you can come through this if you work on pulling all of these energies together. So that's the base reading, the main thing that I've been doing with these particular decks. I do want to show you an alternate version of this in case this sort of manifestation, sacred geometry kind of vibe or language doesn't really work for you. I want to show you an alternate version. Okay, so the decks that I'm using for this little variation here, I am working with the Soul Coaching Oracle cards here in the center as the focus point. The Medicine Woman Oracle, which you'll see I have divided up into their different categories. And then the tarot deck that I'm using for this is the Joie de Vivre. Sometimes I do also use the Story Medicine cards for this. They work really well. So we're going to do kind of the same sort of an idea, the same sort of a practice. We're going to use the Soul Coaching Oracle cards as a way to create a focal point for this reading, a sort of anchor for that manifestation energy that we're trying to cultivate here. So just going to shuffle and pull a card at random. And we got Gratitude. This is a glorious time to be alive and I'm so grateful. So maybe that's something that we need to be focusing on. We're working on cultivating a little bit of gratitude. So the Medicine Woman Oracle, and one of the reasons why I like to use a deck like this as an alternative, and this is definitely something I've been playing with, is because it has a set structure to it. So we have, let me just look in the guidebook so that I make sure that I relate them all correctly. So we have the archetypal Medicine Woman cards, and that is these ones with the brown bottom. The Gifts of the Feminine card with these sort of pink bottom ones. And then we have the action cards, which are the red ones. There are also seasonal cards and animal totems, which I don't use in this particular reading. So I'm not going to be getting into those. So for this one, I'm not going to be using the Feminine Archetypes card, although you certainly could. And I do have another reading that I do with this deck that also takes advantage of the built-in system. But for this particular reading, we're just going to be using these 2 small stacks of cards where we're going to pull a Feminine Gifts card. And I really just look at this as what's the sort of support that we can cultivate for that. And we have Embrace. And this is going to be kind of like the hologram card, right? Sort of like that feminine side of the reading. So that's going to be what we have over here. The Remember Your Primal Nature, You Are a Vessel. So again, that came out of the little selection of cards that were labeled as the feminine gifts. And then I'm going to use the action cards as kind of that sort of active energy. So we can think of this also as active and passive energy needed to cultivate, to work with, to manifest this energy of gratitude. And we got grounding. So being well grounded provides a feeling of security. I think that works really well with gratitude and embrace. So we kind of got to like embrace who we are. We got to ground into that. That's the active state of being. And then that is going to help us kind of cultivate that gratitude that we're looking for. So again, I've used the structure of the Oracle deck itself to help me sort of cultivate this reading. But you can see I've put a little bit of a different spin on it. I still have the sort of active and passive side of things, the maybe awareness or the conscious self, the subconscious self, you know, masculine, feminine, however, whatever language you want to use for that. And then I'm going to use the joie de vivre, just because I like, it's fun. And I like using this deck that kind of like brings a little bit of fun to the reading, a little bit of play, like manifestation and cultivating, and like all of that can sometimes feel really, really heavy. And sometimes I like to use a lighter deck for like even serious work, because like it allows me that we can have play even in serious work. So we've got the 9 of coins, the Hanged Man, and the 7 of coins. So that's kind of, again, our foundational message. We have this that we're going to work on manifesting. Like, how do we go about the process of doing that? Hopefully that is making some sense. I'm going to do one more, and I'll go ahead and show it to you with the story medicine, just so you can see how it works with, I guess, a little bit more of a serious deck, let's say. And let's go ahead and pull, whoops, another, let's just throw that one. That one wanted to come out. So healing, phenomenal healing energy flows through every cell of my body. That is a wonderful sort of energy to have. That's something that we're going to be working on manifesting. Let's go ahead and start with the active first. It doesn't really matter which direction you do these in. And I think technically, like, because I'm right-handed, my active should be over here, but I just kind of let them go however the cards go down. But let's do it that way. So my action is gratitude. How funny is that? Feel how life showers you with blessings, give thanks. So what I can actively do is express gratitude, is to make sure that I am actually living that gratitude experience, where I'm not just saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be grateful today, but I'm actually acting in accordance with that gratitude. So then let's go ahead and pull our sort of passive side of this. I kind of like those words better than the masculine and feminine for this particular reading. I kind of started with that language because that is the language in the Magdalene manifestation card, but as I've been working through it, I kind of enjoy the language of the active and passive as well. So this now becomes our passive with self-knowledge, dive into your depths where your truth resides. So that's beautiful. That's like that intuitive knowing. That's what we're going to be passively tapping into, right? Innately passing into. And I think that's really beautiful. So let's pull out the story medicine. Everything that I've shown in this video so far is mass market. This, however, is an indie deck, just to kind of let you know and what you're looking at here. So I'm going to go ahead, and these are really big cards. Hopefully we have enough space. Let's kind of shift things up a little bit. I got to that one little plant just wanting to be in the way. Okay, make a little bit of space. So again, I'm just gonna pull my 3 cards for that deeper layer, for that kind of what do I need to do. So we have Grandmother of Pentacles, my bones tell me. I really like this deck because it's kind of like a tarot and oracle in one. I feel like that's why I like it better than the other one. And I just like the artwork better, but like it's multi-purpose. We have the Moon card with story, and then we have the 7 of Pentacles with grow into it. So this tells me this is very much about like, you know, cultivating that healing energy, not only from a very sort of intuitive place, but also in a very practical, everyday kind of sense. Like the work is what is going to help you to create that healing energy that you need. Like, right, you got to put your energy into it. You got to actually work through it, work with it. And I think that this deck actually works really beautifully for this. But you can see, like, this has a totally different energy than what we were looking at with the first pairing, or the first example of this reading. So really, depending on the kind of the decks that you use can really determine the sort of energy and the theme of this sort of a reading. But what we're really looking at here when we're doing this kind of an exercise is we're looking at creating a focal point in that center, that anchor for your manifestation, for what you're trying to cultivate, for what you're trying to bring into your life. Then we have sort of that passive and active energies, the conscious, subconscious, kind of bringing those together in the Magdalene manifestation. Again, this one does work really well for this because that structure is inherently built into this deck. So every card has its key and its hologram, which is great because you can, again, making sure that you're getting those sort of active and passive elements in a very structured, succinct way. But you can also very much just use any kind of like oracle deck that you have a structure to. It does also work like just in a very general kind of sense with any sort of oracle and tarot put together, because you're really just looking at the intentions behind the positions, right? So if I want, I could say this is my focal point with adventure, and then my active is passion, my passive is freedom. Again, this is the base of what it is that I'm trying to manifest. That is the key line, the main energies. And then I just use my tarot to kind of dive a little bit deeper, where we have the Page of Swords, the Page of Coins, and the Six of Coins. So you can see that I can do this sort of focused spread, manifestation spread with any tarot and oracle. It works really well either way. I like using the different cards for the different prompts because I like using decks that are kind of intuitively meant to serve in those purposes or in those practices. Something like the manifestation cards obviously has that sort of active and passive dualistic side of things built in. Something like the sacred geometry activations also has that sort of focal point energy built in, where we're really honing in on a particular idea or theme or energy. And then of course, just any tarot will work. You could also do any like oracle, right? You don't have to necessarily mix tarot and oracle. I just really enjoy that, adding that layer underneath. And like, let's be honest, anything I can add tarot to, I'm definitely going to, because that is really the foundation of my practice. I may work with a lot of different oracle decks, and in recent years, I've been working with them even more in terms of how I'm creating readings and spreads, because I am finding that for creating focal points, creating intentions, for creating portals in a sense into particular energies or aspects, oracle works really, really well for that, because it's very broad, it's very open, it's not tied into a particular structure like tarot is. But when it comes to getting those deeper layer messages, I think that the tarot just really fits the bill for that for me, because I can use the oracle cards to create that sort of foundational layer, that what it is in a general sense that I'm trying to do, and then the tarot to kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of that. So I hope that you enjoyed this DIY tarot spread of creating a manifestation or cultivation spread. I could also just call it a focal point spread, but really what we're looking at with this particular spread is having something to very succinctly focus on, looking at the active, passive, masculine, feminine, whichever language works for you. That the two dualities of that aspect and of what needs to come together to bring things into balance into that central focus card, and then the tarot to just dive deeper into that and see where we can apply it and how we can work through that energy. As always, you'll find links for everything I've shown here in the description box below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.